Hey! You ignored a call from Mom the other day, didn't you? What? No, I didn't ignore her. Don't lie. She complained to me that you didn't answer the phone. I thought to myself, here we go again. My husband said this, but I never received a call from my mother-in-law. Not since we got married. I disliked her. She always doted on my husband, John, and I was left out. Then, shall I show you the proof? Just apologize to her directly next time, all right? Directly? But your parents' home is quite far, isn't it? Ah, don't worry about that. John said, grinning. What's so funny? The thing is, Mom is coming here tomorrow. We'll be together all the time from now on. Hearing this, I accidentally dropped and shattered the glass I was washing. In a tragic turn, the glass made a loud crash and shattered into pieces. It was one of my favorite glasses. You can't just spring that on me. We don't even have a spare room. Then what about your room? Your study? You barely use it anyway. Why does it have to be my room? Just make sure everything's tidy before Mom arrives. You can even throw stuff out if you want. His words confused me. Why is she coming? Huh? Why? There's no reason. I just want to be with Mom. I was so stunned, I couldn't say anything. Mother's boy. This started after my father-in-law passed away. John always had a mama's boy tendency. Until now, his father played a barrier role, but not anymore. I'm not hidden from it. Whenever something comes up, it's always Mom, Mom. As his wife, I might as well not exist. Shouldn't you at least discuss it with me? Huh? Why should I discuss anything with you? Besides, this is our house. This is the house I inherited. Enough. Just do as I say. I realized talking to John any further was pointless. No matter what I said, his mind was full of thoughts about his mom. That's it, no more holding back. If that's what you want, I'll do it. It's okay to empty it, right? That's what I've been saying. Don't make me repeat myself. Don't you understand? Just confirming. 7 seconds later, I made a call. It was to a demolition company. Why don't you go pick up your mother? She's arriving tomorrow, right? But she's coming tomorrow. Come back with her then. She'll be delighted, I'm sure. Sometimes you do say the right things. I can't stay here. I gotta go. And so, I got John out of the house, and everything was set. Just you wait. After I demolished the house and moved, John and his mother are in for a hell of a surprise. I'm Emily, a 34-year-old full-time homemaker this year. I'm home. What's for dinner? It's almost ready. Okay, thanks for that. The one speaking so curtly is my husband, John. We've been married for 3 years. We met at a corporate party. Back then, I was working at an event planning company, and he was one of the attendees. Excuse me. Yes, how can I help you? Would you like to exchange contact information? Huh? That was our first conversation. I was surprised, but it didn't feel unpleasant. Sorry for being so sudden. It was love at first sight. Love at first sight. It's my first time feeling this way. Sorry. It's a first for me too. Eventually, we exchanged contact details. I think I felt excited all the way home that day. Later, John got in touch, and we went out for a meal. At first, he seemed a bit unreliable. Would you like to date me? I'd be pleased to. And so, we started dating. John was 3 years older than me. Although he was older, it didn't really feel like it, and I was comfortable around him. We got married 6 months later. Then, John's attitude changed drastically from when we were dating. My mom says she wants to see you. Your mother? Yes, so we're going back to my parents' house tomorrow. Isn't that a bit sudden? We're off tomorrow, so it's a good time. Okay. To be honest, I've always found my mother-in-law difficult. It started with our pre-marriage meeting. You're finally back. I'm home. And who is this? Oh, this is my girlfriend, Emily. She looked me up and down. Come in for now. Thank you for having me. I felt like she glared at me. When it came time for the marriage introduction, John became even quieter. His father's presence was quite significant. Now you can finally get away from your mother. Really? Emily didn't know? He's always been a mama's boy since he was little. Is that so? I glanced at my husband, John, who seemed intimidated by his father. Ever since he was little, he would hide behind his mother whenever he got scared. I was drawn into learning about John's past, a side of him I never knew. My father-in-law and I ended up chatting and laughing about it. Then my mother-in-law spoke up. Hey, Dad, that's enough. What? We were just getting to a good part, right? He looked at me for agreement, and I nodded instinctively. My mother-in-law's gaze turned even sharper towards me. I realized I might have crossed a line. We can talk about this some other time, right? Okay. Eventually, our marriage was approved, and thanks to my father-in-law's kindness, we ended up staying the night at their house. Emily, do you drink? Yes, I do. Why don't we have some together? Sure. My father-in-law loved his liquor. Drinking with him, I learned more about John's past that I hadn't heard before. My father-in-law had always been strict with him. Since he was a child, John lacked confidence, and his father tried to remedy that. Taking care of him can be tough, but I'm counting on you. My father-in-law said, bowing his head to me. I think that's when our relationship began to improve. 2 hours into drinking, I realized that John had disappeared. He had been there just a moment ago. Where's John? Come to think of it, I haven't seen Mom either. Where could they have gone? They'll probably be back soon. At that time, I was still unaware of John's true nature. My father-in-law and I ended up drinking until it was almost the next day. My father-in-law, perhaps tired from the drinking, was fast asleep. As I was about to clean up. How dare you drink so much as a woman? I was startled by my mother-in-law's voice from behind. You understand that you'll have to follow my instructions from now on, right? Yes, I understand. And be careful with John, he's sensitive. Understood. But where is John? I've put him to bed. Put him to bed? I was shocked. It seemed impossible that a grown man over 30 would be put to bed by his mother. Just don't get in the way of me and John. Was this what my father-in-law had been hinting at? Could John really be a mama's boy? After being given such a stern warning by my mother-in-law, I went to bed. And then the next morning. From now on, with Mom not around, you need to pull your weight. I know. We're counting on you, Emily. Yes. There were no words from my mother-in-law. After becoming a couple, I confronted my husband with a question that had been bothering me. John, are you a mama's boy? What? No way. Did you take what Dad said seriously? There are other things that concern me too. Just drop it, okay? John said this, but perhaps he was actually afraid of his father. Then, an incident happened that seemed to unravel everything. That day, we were heading to John's parents' house, as his mother had asked us to. I wondered why now. As we'd never been summoned like this after getting married. I was sure something was up. We're home, Mom. I've missed you. It's been a while. She completely ignored me. Inside, they were having a great time, and I wondered why I was even there. Then I realized something. My father-in-law wasn't there. Where's father-in-law? He must be at the hospital right now. Is something wrong? I don't know. He's been feeling unwell lately. My mother-in-law seemed indifferent about her husband's condition. Isn't that concerning? Concerning? What do you mean? Aren't you worried? She sighed. Why don't you go check on him? He seems to like you. That's not the point. I looked to John for support, but he was indifferent. Far from being concerned about the situation, he was completely engrossed in the cake his mother had baked, not even glancing in my direction. Then they did something unbelievable. We have plans to go out, so can you stay home and watch the house? Stay home? John seemed almost amused. Sorry to ask, but it's for Dad, right? He'd be troubled if no one's home. Maybe, but still. You can do whatever you want while we're gone. It's not a bad deal, right? Wait. We gotta go. Take care of things here. With that, they left. They said I could do as I pleased, but I had no desire to do anything. I was just left in their house, waiting for time to pass. Hours went by. Hearing the sound of the door opening, I hurriedly made my way to the entrance. Father-in-law? Emily, what's going on? Where are they? They went out. Went out? Let's talk in the living room. I moved to the living room and explained to my father-in-law what had happened today. I see. First off, I wasn't even informed they were coming today. What? Plus, I had a hospital visit planned for today. So mother-in-law knew about it. She might have planned this when I was away. But why would she do that? Father-in-law seemed deep in thought, crossing his arms. Probably because I'm in the way. But it's so blatant. Won't it eventually come out? She must have thought it was worth the risk. Actually, what father-in-law told me was shocking. If what he suspected was true, it was nothing short of a disaster. Father-in-law made a suggestion. How about we exchange contact information? It might come in handy if something happens. I would appreciate that. We need to be careful around those two. I don't mind, but I don't want you to suffer, Emily. That's kind of you, father-in-law. Please take care of yourself. You're the only one who says that to me, Emily. Father-in-law smiled a little sadly. Seeing him like that made me feel lonely too. We waited for their return. But no matter how long we waited, they didn't come back. Emily, isn't your phone ringing? Huh? I checked my phone and saw a missed call from my husband. Where are you? Sorry for the late contact. I'm at home. What? And mother-in-law? She's here with me. We're staying overnight. What's that supposed to mean? So, don't bother coming back. Don't joke about this. See you. He hung up. I stood there, stunned. Is something wrong? It seems they're at the other house. And mother-in-law is staying the night. So, they hate me that much. It's ridiculous. I know. I need to think about this. Father-in-law's expression was serious. What will you do, Emily? I'll leave now. I can still make it home. I won't let them do whatever they want. John is lucky to have a wife like you. I said goodbye to father-in-law and left. I had to speak my mind to my husband and mother-in-law. Exhausted after changing trains and riding the bullet train, I finally arrived home past 11 p.m. Breathing heavily, I opened the front door. Then, I heard their laughter. Irritated, I immediately went to confront them. Oh, you're back? You're late. What were you doing? Unable to hold back, I confronted them both. What are you doing here? We're just visiting, what else? Visiting? And leaving father-in-law like that? There's no need to get so angry. Yeah, that's no way to talk. John, you decided this without any communication. That's enough, right? Mother-in-law is here, after all. If you don't like it, you can leave. What? This is my house, isn't it? It's just a house your parents gave you, right? Indeed, the house I currently live in was given by my parents. My father passed away just as I graduated from college, having built this house with the little money he had left. My mother had died when I was young, so he was my last remaining parent. That's why I couldn't forgive their attitude towards father-in-law. Anyway, you should leave tomorrow. Fine. I headed to the room I use as a study. Whenever something unpleasant happens, I always retreat here. My hobby is making jewelry, so I spent the time absorbed in crafting. Before I knew it, the morning sun had risen. I headed to the living room, where mother-in-law was already awake. You look terrible. Thanks to you. So you'll be leaving today? You're persistent. Yes, I know. The mood was gloomy from the morning. Mother-in-law left for her house around noon. Watching my husband send her off with a sad look was unbearable. Afterward, John and mother-in-law were quiet. It was peaceful without mother-in-law. I wished it could always be like this, but it wasn't to be. We need to talk. Have a seat. When I returned from work, I noticed John's unusual demeanor. What's the talk about? Actually, father-in-law has collapsed. Collapsed? Why? You've heard about it from him, haven't you? I heard something before, but it seems pretty serious. That's because you two neglected him. So, can you take care of father-in-law? Take care of him? Why me? What about your mom? It's father-in-law's request. Father-in-law's? I was full of doubts. I was worried about father-in-law's collapse, but why me? I immediately contacted father-in-law. I heard from John, but... Yes, it must have been sudden for you. It was. I don't think I have much time left. I know my body well. Don't talk like that, please. There's something I need to ask of you. This is something I can only entrust to you, Emily. Father-in-law explained his one wish. Revenge on John and mother-in-law. He was fed up with their indifference, even as he fell ill. I decided to fulfill father-in-law's earnest wish. I'll do whatever I can to help. Thank you. I conveyed this immediately. Great. What about your job? I'll quit, of course. I can't work and take care of father-in-law. Right. The next day, I submitted my resignation and headed to my in-laws' house. When I arrived, father-in-law, who had grown frail, thanked me. Thank you for coming so soon. It's okay. I've made my decision. Good. Isn't mother-in-law here? She went to a friend's place today. I see. But this might be an opportunity. Exactly. Let's discuss our next steps. We planned our strategy. I have an idea, can I tell you? Of course. It's about what happens after I die. What do you mean? Honestly, I don't want to leave anything to those two. You mean the inheritance? Yes. They don't know, but they'll regret it after I'm gone. Are you sure? I've thought about it a lot since I got sick. Understood. We talked about various things. Then mother-in-law returned as if nothing had happened. What? You're already here. Mother-in-law isn't reliable, so... You'll work hard then. I know what to do. I couldn't leave father-in-law's care to mother-in-law. I spent about half the week at their house. But father-in-law's condition worsened. Father-in-law, are you okay? Sorry for the trouble. This is my job now. Don't worry. Emily, I'm counting on you for what comes next. Ever since I started taking care of father-in-law, mother-in-law never showed any concern or uttered a caring word. At least she could say something to father-in-law. It's fine. They'll regret it eventually. Maybe, but still. By the way, how's John behaving? Nothing unusual. He might be quiet now, but stay alert. When I went back to get some change of clothes, it seemed John had been waiting for me. How's Dad? He was okay today, but his condition is not great. I see. Why don't you visit him? Now? He'd just complain. Since I started caring for father-in-law, John often asked about his condition. Maybe he was feeling some regret. I had a faint hope that things might change for the better. I just wanted John to become responsible. But then mother-in-law would show up. Mom? Did you say you were coming today? I was nearby. The troublesome person had arrived. Make yourself comfortable. We were about to start cooking. Will Emily cook? Yes, she will. Then I'm looking forward to it. I began preparing, thinking one extra person wouldn't make much difference. Here you go. It doesn't look bad, but how's the taste? Mother-in-law said that and took a bite. To my astonishment, she spat it out immediately. What are you doing? How dare you serve something so terrible? It tastes the same as always to me. Mother-in-law glared at John. Then, my husband quickly changed his opinion and started belittling me, just like my mother-in-law. This tastes like garbage. Maybe you're too focused on Dad's care to cook properly? So rude to spit it out. Enough. Let's go eat out, John. Yeah, let's do that. The two of them stood up and left the house. John couldn't stand up to his mother. I felt foolish for hoping he'd change. No time for hesitation now. John returned alone after 2 hours. Where's mother-in-law? She's gone home. I see. What was earlier about? What? Changing your opinion based on mother-in-law's mood. I always thought that way. I realized it was time to set things straight. Then prepare your own meals from now on. Especially if it's that bad. Seriously? Of course. I went back to care for father-in-law. It was after about 3 months of living like this. Father-in-law's condition suddenly worsened, and we rushed him to the hospital. Hang in there, father-in-law. I might not last much longer. Don't say that. There's something I need to tell you. Remember the inheritance talk? I've written a will. A lawyer will contact you after I pass. Please, don't talk anymore. His pulse weakened on the way to the hospital. By the time we arrived at the hospital, he had completely stopped breathing. I was in shock, unable to think. With trembling hands, I desperately made a phone call. I tried calling mother-in-law, but she didn't answer. John picked up after 4 attempts. What's wrong? Father-in-law has passed away. What? He's dead. Mother-in-law is there with you, right? Yeah. Let me talk to her. Mother-in-law took the phone. What? Father-in-law just passed away. Oh, is that so? That's all you have to say? What else? We're free from him now. I've never felt such strength in my fists before. So you say. But you'll regret it. I doubt that. Neither of them came to the hospital that day. I returned to my in-laws' house, spending the night there. The next day, they were already at the hospital. Mama, I'm tired. Yes, let's go home. I couldn't help but wonder what I was being made to witness. The death of my father-in-law might have triggered the release of emotions and feelings my husband had been harboring until now. This revealed the true nature of my husband. You just got here? What? I'm here, no complaints. What's with John? It's just the usual. I definitely prefer it this way. We've got nothing to fear now. Don't defy me. What? This was the moment I considered divorce. Mother-in-law led a simple funeral for father-in-law. It was what's known as a family funeral, a decision driven by mother-in-law's reluctance to spend money. Even in death, father-in-law was disregarded, which pained me deeply. After the funeral, I returned home. It was the most unpleasant funeral I had ever experienced. From then on, I lived with a heavy heart. Hello? Yes, this is me. A lawyer? A person claiming to be a lawyer contacted me. There, I remembered father-in-law's words. The ones he had spoken to me in the ambulance. I understand. I'll be there shortly. I went to the lawyer's office where father-in-law's will was opened. He had left a notarized will. The contents were shocking, and I thought they could be used for revenge against my husband and mother-in-law. When I got home, my husband approached me aggressively. "Hey! You ignored a call from Mom, didn't you?" "What? I didn't ignore any call. Don't lie. She complained to me that you didn't answer." I thought, here we go again. My husband said this, but I never received a phone call from my mother-in-law. Not once since we got married. I disliked my mother-in-law. He doted on my husband all the time, leaving me feeling excluded. Should I show you the proof? Just apologize to her directly next time. Directly? Your parents' house is quite far, isn't it? Don't worry about that. My husband chuckled. What's so funny? Actually, Mom is coming here tomorrow. We'll be together all the time from now on. Hearing this, I accidentally dropped and shattered a glass I was washing. Tragically, the glass made a loud crashing sound as it shattered. It was one of my favorites. Such a sudden announcement. The room isn't even ready. What about your room? The study that you barely use? Why does it have to be my room? Anyway, clean up before Mom arrives. You can even throw stuff out if you want. I was confused by my husband's words. Just having read father-in-law's will, my mind wasn't working properly. What's the reason? What reason? There's no reason. I just want to be with Mom. I was speechless. What's with this Mom? Such a mama's boy. I realized how much father-in-law had been a buffer for us. However, I never imagined they would take action so quickly. Shouldn't you discuss this with me first? Why do I need to consult you? This is our house. This house was inherited by me. Stop nagging. Just do as I say. I realized talking to my husband was pointless. His mind was filled with thoughts of his mother. If that's the case, I have my own plans too. If that's what you want, I'll do it. It's okay to empty it, right? That's what I've been saying. Don't make me repeat myself. Don't you understand? Just confirming. 7 seconds later, I made a phone call to a certain place. It is a demolition company. Yes, that's right. As soon as possible, please. What are you talking about? Tomorrow is fine. Thank you. Are you listening to me? What? Who did you call? I'm thinking of selling some unwanted stuff. That call. Sounds like a good idea. I couldn't believe how foolish he was. Despite it being completely untrue. Just to be sure, I made a suggestion to my husband. I'll be cleaning up, so why don't you go pick up your mother? But she's coming tomorrow, right? Come back with her then. She'll be happy, I'm sure. Sometimes you do say the right things. I can't stay here. I gotta go. With my husband out of the house, everything was set. Just wait and see. First, I packed my belongings. Then, I had all of John's sellable items taken away by a recycling company. After tidying up the room, I visited a real estate agent. Since the inheritance procedures would take some time, I decided to rent another house for the time being. How about this place? If you sign the contract today, you can move in tomorrow. Then I'll take this room, please. Understood. Now, about the contract. After successfully completing the contract, I returned home. It was my last day in this house. Today marks my farewell to this house. It was the home my father left for me, but I needed to show those two the consequences of their actions. I will surely build another house here one day. So, I spent one last night in the house. By morning, I had moved all my belongings to my new home, and the demolition of the old house began. I checked on the demolition before heading to my new place. All that was left was to wait for a call from the two of them. About 2 hours later, it came. Hello? Hey! What's happening? What's wrong? The house is being demolished. Mom's stuff is about to arrive. Is that so? Explain yourself. All right, wait there. I'll come over. I went to where they were waiting. Upon spotting me, my husband hurried over. Why is the house being demolished? It's revenge, John. It was also father-in-law's wish. Don't talk nonsense. This house is mine. I can do whatever I want with it. Then, my mother-in-law tried to attack me. Please stop. How dare you? Now we have nowhere to live. That's for you to figure out. Mom, we might have to go back to our family home. Regrettably, that's our only option. I decided to play my final card. I think you should reconsider that. What are you talking about? That's right. Just look at this. I showed them father-in-law's will. What is this? It can't be true. It's not a lie. This is the will father-in-law left. The will specified the transfer of rights to the family house from my father-in-law to me. It was also written that I would inherit any remaining savings that my father-in-law had left behind. Hold on. There's a reserved portion of the inheritance, right? We're still entitled to some money. How unfortunate for you. You think I'd give you everything? But the remaining inheritance is only $20,000? What? That means $5,000 each for you. That can't be. There should be more. Please accept it. It's the truth. Father-in-law had anticipated this. In addition to the will, there was a letter addressed to me, and it revealed something crucial. Father-in-law had left only a minimal amount of money, donating the rest to charitable organizations. If that's okay with you, I'll make sure to give you your share. What will you do? They remained silent. You should think about not returning to the family home for now. Maybe you should start looking for a new place soon? This woman. My mother-in-law tried to grab me again, but dramatically fell over. It's really unfortunate it had to come to this. But it can't be helped, right? If only you had thought more about your husband, none of this would have happened. I left them sitting there and walked away. I was unable to suppress a smile thinking about their future. Now, only the final step remained. Back in my new home, I immediately prepared the divorce papers. Then, please take care of it for me. Thank you. I believe the inheritance procedures will be completed by next week. Okay, please keep handling it. A week later, the divorce was finalized. They were making a fuss about the inheritance, but it was too late for that. The reserved share was just a small amount, and knowing them, they would probably spend it quickly. Having completed the inheritance process, I went to the family house to dispose of my mother-in-law's belongings. There, I found my ex-husband and mother-in-law. What are you doing here? They turned to look at me. What are you doing here? I'm clearing out someone's stuff. You can't do that. But this house is officially mine now. So please leave quickly. Wait. Can't you reconsider? What? There's no way I can do that now. If you don't leave, I'll call the police. We're strangers now. Police? Mom, let's just go. Wait. This is my house. Let go. Come on. Thus, they hurriedly left the family house. I doubt they will come back after this. Then, I cleaned up the house, leaving only what belonged to my late father-in-law. I'm sure this would bring him peace. Really? Is that true? Yes, it seems so. I heard it's even become a neighborhood rumor. It seems that my ex-husband and mother-in-law are now living modestly in a small apartment. Apparently, they often fight so loudly that it can be heard even from outside. They were labeled as the neighborhood's troublesome duo. What a foolish pair they are. I never want to deal with such a mama's boy again. As for me, I continue to live in my new rented room. I couldn't bear to live in the house with such unpleasant memories. So I decided to keep it under father-in-law's watch for now. It's time for me to move forward for myself. Don't slack off, you useless wife. Don't use morning sickness as an excuse. My husband, looking down on me, was yelling with spittle flying. I was lying on the couch, trying to rest, and struggled to stand up. But as soon as I did, nausea surged from my stomach to my throat, and I covered my mouth with my palm. I stroked my swollen belly, trying to soothe it, but the nausea didn't subside at all. A senior colleague told me, even with morning sickness, you can still cook and clean. Besides, it's strange that you still have morning sickness with such a big belly. His words gave me a headache all over again. Morning sickness typically begins in the early stages of pregnancy and usually settles down by second trimester. However, about 20% of women, like me, continue to suffer from it even after that. My husband has been directly told this by the doctor. Yet, he still treats me as a useless wife, slacking off in household chores using morning sickness as an excuse. You believe your colleague's words over the doctor's, over watching me suffer right in front of your eyes. As I felt overwhelmed by helplessness, my husband, who was looking down on me, suddenly fell silent and walked behind the couch where I was lying. Then he started kicking my back, trying to knock me off the couch. Stop it. It hurts, please stop. Dull thuds echoed from my back. If I fell off the couch, my belly would hit the floor. If I turned around, his kicks might hit my belly directly. As I panicked, not knowing what to do, suddenly a woman's voice rang out. Are you okay? The woman, an experienced mom I had recently become friends with, gently touched my back and slowly helped me up. As I felt the warmth of her hands, tears welled up in my eyes. Looking up at her, I saw my husband behind her, shaking all over and as pale as I've ever seen him. I'm Emily, 29 years old and currently pregnant. I work for a cosmetics company, but I'm on early maternity leave. This is because I've been suffering from morning sickness for almost the entire pregnancy. While many people say morning sickness only occurs in the early stages, I'm still struggling with it in the late stages of pregnancy. I haven't gained weight, and my health isn't great. I've even discussed hospitalization with my doctor. While it's not common, there are a certain number of women who go through this. Since the early stages of my pregnancy, I've often been unable to manage household chores. There's nothing I can do to stop the morning sickness, but my husband has been growing increasingly frustrated with me. My husband is Michael. 2 years older, and we went to same high school. We met in high school, where I was the manager of the soccer team. We didn't talk much back then. We started dating after a soccer team alumni gathering. After dating for about 2.5 years, we got married when I was 26. I didn't know much about him until we started dating, but I remember thinking he was a genuinely straightforward person. That was evident during a weekend date at a shopping mall near a toy store. There was a play area for kids, and some toys were laid out. The children playing there all seemed happy, each finding their favorite toy to play with. I thought to myself that placing these samples might lead to sales, and it's also a good way for the store to find out what interests children, making it effective from a marketing standpoint. Hey, that's a toy from my company. He works at a toy manufacturer, and some of the toys in that area were from his company. It feels good to see them play happily. It makes me feel like it was worth making them. Michael's expression was one of happiness as he watched the children play with the toys. I never thought he would change so much after I got pregnant and started having morning sickness. I was impressed by his dedication to his job. I had thought that because Michael was such a person, there would be no worries even after having a child. But once I got pregnant and the morning sickness began, Michael started to frown. The severity of my morning sickness made it impossible to lead a normal life. I couldn't even sleep properly. I often had to get off the train during my commute due to nausea and started experiencing symptoms similar to anemia. Household chores became particularly difficult, moving around for cleaning was painful, and cooking was impossible due to constant nausea. Since I used to do most of the chores, naturally, our daily life was affected. That's when Michael started to scorn me as if he had become a different person. It's really unpleasant to see your face like you're about to throw up. Can't you try to act a bit more cheerful, even if you're feeling sick? I'm not sick, so you should at least manage to serve meals. Are you trying to starve me? What is this? Did you really clean? He would express his annoyance with me every day. It was so unreasonable that I wanted to have a proper discussion about it, but my morning sickness was so bad that I couldn't even talk properly. Just sitting up made me feel sick, and talking triggered nausea. When that happened, Michael would sigh heavily and say, "Don't waste my time." When I asked why he would say such things to me, pregnant with his child, he replied, "A colleague at work said so." Who's this person? A colleague at work. He's got a wife and kids, so he's convincing. And what did he say? That morning sickness is just an excuse to slack off. I couldn't believe a man who had never been pregnant, especially one whose wife had given birth, would say such a thing. I wanted to say that, but my condition reached its limit, and the conversation ended. As I lay down on the sofa, unable to bear it any longer, Michael remarked, "It must be nice to be pregnant and able to sleep all day," and left. Why did Michael believe this guy's words? I wondered if his wife was really okay. It was someone else's business, but I was worried. Anyway, I felt it was dangerous to continue like this until delivery. The next prenatal checkup is on Saturday. Come with me. What? On my day off? You didn't even attend the parenting classes. The doctor said it's important for husbands to hear some things, so he wants you to come. My colleague said he never went to any of that. Well, at my clinic, I'm about the only one whose husband doesn't accompany her. Sounds like a hassle. Michael, who cares about his image, wouldn't like to be seen as the only unconcerned husband. The doctor really had said, it would be good if your husband could come once, so hopefully, he would say something. I hoped this would be an opportunity for Michael to change his perspective. On Saturday, as planned, I got Michael to accompany me to the prenatal checkup. The ultrasound showed the baby was a bit smaller than average, but growing healthily. I felt greatly relieved by that information. Still can't eat much? Right, I feel nauseous. During the consultation with the doctor, Michael sat next to me. You're anemic too. Just take it easy. Yes, the morning sickness hasn't stopped. As your belly gets bigger, you might still feel sick. Will it continue until delivery? Some women do experience it until the last month. Is that so? I was only about 3 weeks away from my due date. The thought of feeling even worse was unbearable. Michael, please help your wife stay as rested as possible. The doctor turned to Michael and said. It was a reasonable request from a doctor to a pregnant woman's family. But unbelievably, Michael scoffed. Well, I have work, too. Morning sickness varies from person to person, right? Yes, but your wife's is particularly severe. The doctor calmly replied, but he seemed to have quickly understood what type of spouse Michael was. Usually very gentle, the doctor firmly corrected Michael. Have you ever had a hangover? A little, maybe. Your wife is experiencing something many times worse than that hangover, and it lasts all day. Really, like a hangover? Just sitting up makes her feel sick. Plus, she's a bit anemic, so she feels even worse. Huh. The cervical length is also short. To protect the baby, she needs to rest. The doctor earnestly explained my situation, but Michael just gave non-committal responses and even muttered. Moreover, he murmured quietly, almost inaudibly to the doctor, my colleague said I don't need to listen to this. Looking back, Michael's behavior started changing around the time my pregnancy was confirmed. He often became grumpy, complaining about things like a pile of Uniron shirts, meaning he couldn't wear what he wanted, or that I hadn't collected the mail from the mailbox, leaving it untouched. It seems that whatever his colleague at work told him influenced him to act this way. Certainly, I had become unable to do things I used to, which might have caused inconvenience and dissatisfaction for Michael. However, it's also true that despite both of us working, I had a greater share of household responsibilities. Even when I repeatedly asked for his cooperation because I was feeling unwell, he would just say, "Pregnancy isn't an illness, so don't slack off." I never thought he was like this before the pregnancy. He seemed like a completely different person from the Michael I knew since high school. Please take care not to overdo. The doctor emphasized as I left the consultation room with Michael. Colleague at work said doctors exaggerate, so there's no point in listening. When I heard Michael say that as we sat on the waiting room sofa, I really thought it might be hopeless. He wouldn't understand my situation even after seeing it. Even when explained by the doctor, Michael wouldn't listen. He blindly believed in the words of some unknown person at work, insisting on what suited him best. Could such a man really be a good father to our child? Moreover, was it even safe to be near Michael during childbirth and child-rearing? I had wanted to go back to my parents' home for the birth, but it was impractical. My younger brother and his family were living with my parents, and their home was too far away. Plus, I needed to look for a daycare here. Considering everything, it seemed best to give birth here. I'm going out for a while. I'll be back by dinner, Michael said as we left the hospital, leaving me alone. In other words, he expected me to prepare dinner. I wished he would eat out instead. It seemed that nothing the doctor said stayed in his head. After that, Michael didn't change. He demanded, buy beer and iron all my shirts, showing no empathy at all. He even started yelling at me for being useless when I couldn't do the housework. Despite the ongoing severe morning sickness, feeling the baby's movements was my only solace. The baby inside me is growing healthily. I must protect it at all costs. The Saturday after my prenatal checkup, I was home alone, lying on the sofa. Michael had gone out to meet his college friends and said he would return late after drinking. It was easier without Michael around. I didn't have to deal with the hassle. I just wanted to relax and take care of myself when alone. That's what I had been thinking. Still sleeping? In the evening, suddenly Michael returned home. Weren't you going out drinking? Some guy left because his kid got sick, then the others started saying they needed to be home for dinner or to bathe their kids. Pathetic, like slaves to their wives. It seemed he was the only one who wanted to keep drinking. Frustrated that things didn't go his way, Michael was in a foul mood. So why haven't you made dinner? You said you'd be out drinking. If you were coming home, you should have told me. Don't be so whiny. Michael, venting his irritation at me, shouted and stomped around to the back of the sofa. Incredibly, he started kicking my back as if trying to knock me off the sofa while I was lying down. Stop it, I cried. Pregnancy and morning sickness aren't illnesses. Stop slacking, you useless wife. He continued to kick my curled up back, which was instinctively protecting my belly. If I fell from the sofa, my belly would hit the floor. If I turned, his kicks might hit my belly directly. In a panic, all I could do was clutch my belly. I must protect this child at all costs. At that moment, that's when the doorbell rang repeatedly. It wasn't just the entrance to the building but our apartment door. Startled, Michael went to check the intercom. I seized the opportunity to rush to the front door, ignoring the pain in my back. Hey, Emily! Michael, focused only on the monitor, seemed not to notice that I had moved. From behind, he called out my name in a panicked tone. I unlocked the door with trembling hands and flung it open. I had a guess about who might be there. Emily! Are you okay? Jennifer, please help me! Jennifer. Michael muttered in shock behind me. And for good reason. Standing at the opened front door was Jennifer. After all, she was Michael's boss. I had met Jennifer about 2 months ago. While shopping at a nearby supermarket, I suddenly became so unwell that I couldn't move. I was unable to move a single step, fearing a blackout from anemia. Just then, Jennifer approached and said, "Are you okay? I'll support you. Let's move slowly to a seat where you can sit down." She firmly grasped my shoulder to help. She was a lifesaver. If it weren't for her, I might have passed out right there. The person who helped me at that time was Jennifer. I also had terrible anemia during my pregnancy. Jennifer, who had taken me to the nearest bench sofa, stayed by my side until I recovered. When I finally managed to thank her, she responded with a smile, saying those words. Jennifer must be in her 40s, I guess. She mentioned her high school-aged son was in a dormitory nearby. As a more experienced mother, I wanted to express my gratitude properly and asked for her contact information. That's how my interaction with Jennifer began. She and I bonded over our shared experience as soccer team managers in high school and eventually discovered she was Michael's boss. Jennifer had been concerned about my health, occasionally bringing me fruits I could eat. She had been visiting our home several times. Michael didn't know about this. This was because Jennifer had asked to keep our meetings quiet from Michael. Lately, Michael's behavior has been unacceptable. He's been influenced by this guy at work, disrespecting female colleagues. Are you okay, Emily? Jennifer had guessed that if Michael found out about our friendship, he would probably persuade me not to meet her again. She thought he would panic if he knew his boss was aware of his behavior towards me. But I had already told her everything. That's why Jennifer had said, "I'll help you anytime," and I had kept that in mind, thinking I could rely on her if things got too difficult. What happened just now? Jennifer asked as we sat on the sofa. She was supposed to visit me for dinner, and we were on the phone when Michael returned, so she heard his verbal abuse. Moreover, when Michael returned home, Jennifer and I were on a call, so she could hear Michael's verbal abuse and behavior, even though it was only through audio. He kicked me while I was lying down. That's not true. Michael interjected. I couldn't believe he had the audacity to say that's not true. I couldn't forgive him anymore. He kicked me several times. I mean, it's not like that. As I didn't back down, and under the stern gaze of Jennifer, Michael's words started to falter. In response, Jennifer calmly delivered her message. I warned you before, Michael. If your behavior didn't change, you'd be removed from our project. Your conduct towards female colleagues and your pregnant wife doesn't align with developing toys for children. Please, wait. You're not suitable for this project, as a father, a husband, or a person. You're off the project. No, please, spare me from that. Suddenly, Michael slid down to kneel at Jennifer's feet. I had never seen him like this before. Even though he was in the wrong, he stubbornly said, no. It was pitiful to see how he didn't care about appearances. My disillusionment with Michael intensified in these few minutes. I won't do it again. I promise to bring good ideas. The decision is final. No retraction. Jennifer replied unswervingly. Michael is rubbing his forehead on the floor while uttering irrelevant excuses. I also thought that it's no wonder he was removed from the project. According to what Jennifer told me before, the toy project she leads is a major project planned to develop over several years, and achieving results in it could mean recognition from the company. Being chosen for this project signals high expectations within the company, so many people want to participate to boost their career prospects. Michael, about 2 years ago, was directly under Jennifer from the project's inception and had delivered results in previous product developments, so he was a member from the start. However, Jennifer mentioned that about a year ago, after getting close to a senior colleague, Michael seemed to be influenced negatively. His behavior changed, starting to make disrespectful remarks about women, causing resentment. He also began taking credit for the ideas of his female colleagues and was on track to be removed from the project during discussions with the subleaders. It's outright domestic violence towards Emily. It's dangerous, so I'll protect her. What are you saying? That's not okay. Michael retorted in panic at Jennifer's words. Despite always finding her bothersome, he seems to be worried about losing someone to take care of the house. Emily, you've got your stuff packed, right? Yes, somewhat, so I'm ready for whenever the baby comes. That's not okay. I'll report this as kidnapping to the police. Michael kept barking while following us as we walked away with our luggage. Maybe he thinks mentioning the police will make us stop. I'd rather you call them right now. I'll just tell them I protected her because her husband kicked her. I'm sorry. Please rethink this, Jennifer. Michael frantically followed us to the entrance. But I knew he wouldn't chase us outside. A man as vain as Michael wouldn't do something so undignified. So once we're out the door, we're free. I'll behave. I won't do it again. It's okay. So please don't remove me. As expected, Michael was groveling in the hallway while we put on our shoes. He didn't chase us outside or show any remorse for his actions towards me, just desperately begging his boss for self-preservation. Pathetic. I never knew he was this kind of person. Michael fell silent as I opened the front door with a click. I'm getting a divorce. I'll hire a lawyer. I just said that with closing the front door. Michael was looking at me, his face twisted. I locked the door from the outside and started walking with Jennifer. After leaving the house, I ended up staying at Jennifer's place. She and her husband live in a house with spare rooms, as it's just the two of them, so they kindly offered me a place. However, being pregnant and needing to think about postpartum life, I needed to establish a stable living situation quickly. I started looking for a room I could move into right away, preferably near the hospital where I planned to give birth, to prepare the best environment for it. Jennifer and her husband even offered to help with the move. I really can't thank them enough. Meanwhile, Michael insists that he will absolutely not divorce. I've been avoiding his calls to leave a paper trail and have been communicating in writing, but he keeps sending lengthy, self-centered messages. If we divorce, it'll look bad. If everyone knows we're a happy couple, it'll improve my image, so I absolutely won't divorce. Apologize to Jennifer for admitting you were wrong, make it right so I can get back on the project. It's your fault. My colleague is also angry, so apologize to him too. To be honest, I couldn't understand the meaning behind what he was saying. Was he really serious? I couldn't comprehend why he had such thoughts. In any case, Michael was desperate. That's because Jennifer immediately informed the project members about removing Michael as soon as she returned home that day. This meant being excluded from the career path and was humiliating for Michael, who had been boasting about his competence. Furthermore, the reasons for his removal included behaviors that could be categorized as harassment towards female project members, domestic violence against his wife, and his frequent inability to judge right from wrong. These reasons had spread quickly, and Michael had garnered a terrible reputation. Originally, Michael had boasted everywhere that he was selected for the project because he was a rising star. However, his actions were far from those of a rising star, and everyone understood that. Therefore, the reactions from employees outside the project were more like "I knew it" and "serves you right." Michael may want to redeem himself somehow, but it's probably futile. I had no obligation to listen to Michael's incomprehensible arguments. It might be better to proceed with divorce mediation sooner rather than later. I need to find a lawyer and get things moving quickly. While staying at Jennifer's house, helping with house hunting and arranging for a lawyer. The doorbell rang at Jennifer's house. Jennifer went to check the outside camera and muttered them. Could it be Michael? Jennifer. It's okay. Just wait a moment. Jennifer left me in the living room, where we were working together, and stepped outside. I heard the front door open and then close. After a while, the door burst open again, accompanied by several loud voices. The first to enter was a man I didn't recognize. Michael and Jennifer followed by. This the wife? Yes. Don't move any further. I'll call the police for trespassing. Upon Jennifer's words, phone in hand, the two men stopped dead in their tracks. They had evidently forced their way in. It's okay, Jennifer. We just came to talk. The stranger said with raising his hands. He was about Michael's age and had a smug, unpleasant grin. He was grinning and freaked out. Listen to what he has to say. Emily. I realized this must be the senior colleague Michael often mentioned. The man cleared his throat exaggeratedly before beginning to speak. First off, a wife should fully support her husband. You can't just slack off using excuses like feeling sick or morning sickness. Understand? He started lecturing me eventually. Just like Michael, nonsensical. If you don't take care of yourself and serve your husband, you'll be left. Women need men to survive, so you better work hard not to be abandoned. And yet you defy your husband? You're greatly mistaken. You better apologize to Michael and make up. I was horrified at his antiquated thinking. We were on completely different wavelengths. There's no way we could have a reasonable conversation. I felt paralyzed, as if encountering something unfathomable. You're lucky your wife hasn't left you. My wife knows her place. Jennifer, you're too bossy for a woman, always interfering. They started arguing. Jennifer's ability to respond logically and calmly was impressive. I admired her capability. Even though it might be misplaced in this situation. It's hard to take seriously someone who barges into another's home so rudely. We said we're visiting, didn't we? You accessed our address through company records, didn't you? Threatened someone? That's against the rules, accessing personal information. It's not like that. Michael can't do anything alone, so he brought backup to try and force his way. Michael stiffened when Jennifer pointed out suddenly. Two men teaming up to trespass without an appointment, trying to coerce by sheer force. It's true what they say, the weaker the dog, the louder its bark. Jennifer snorted through her nose with a smirk. Her clearly provocative words made me more worried. Despite being in a position of power, she was facing two men. Excuse me? Is that all you got to say? Cowards should run away before they get reported, Jennifer challenged them. What? Michael and the senior colleague visibly lost their temper. Just then, the door behind them burst open with a loud crash. Everyone froze, shocked by the sound and force. It was at the back of the living room. Who was standing there was Jennifer's husband. A towering figure over 6.6 feet tall and weighing over 200 pounds, muscular and imposing. Only his mouth was visible above the door frame. As he slowly moved and bent down to pass under the frame into the living room, Michael stumbled and fell on his behind. He looked up at Jennifer's husband with unfocused eyes, trembling and foaming at the mouth. Ah! Michael and the senior scrambled out of the room, shouting and rolling over each other. They eventually left the house, and all was silent. Jennifer, don't provoke them too much. It's dangerous. They're not as tough as they talk, and I knew you'd come to help. Even so, you never know. Okay. Jennifer and her husband had a great relationship. He was a former football player with enough talent to be considered for corporate teams. His physique is impressive and matches his background, making him look very intimidating. However, in reality, he is incredibly kind and has a great sense of humor. He's always full of consideration for Jennifer, and it's evident that she trusts her husband deeply. Last night, watching them eat dinner together, I thought they were such a wonderful couple. In the end, I stayed at Jennifer's house for 3 nights. I feel like I've become even closer to Jennifer. She seems like a real sister to me, or even like a best friend I've had for a long time. We hurriedly decided on a new place to move into, and while Michael was at work, I moved my belongings with Jennifer's help. The people who helped me at that time were Jennifer's husband's football friends. Some of them worked for moving companies, and they were introduced to me. With their availability and willingness to help, the move was done easily and at a low cost. Later, Jennifer told me about Michael and his colleague. They had threatened someone in HR to get her personal information, causing a big issue at the company. Already unpopular, their reputation plummeted. I heard that Michael and that man, having tarnished their reputations, were not only shunned by the project team members but also couldn't even get proper greetings from other employees at the company. They tried spreading false rumors about Jennifer, but it only led to more disdain. The issues were dealt with severely at the company, resulting in pay cuts, demotions, and transfers for both. Feeling uncomfortable at the company, both resigned. Regarding Michael, His domestic violence and punishment at work reached his parents, especially infuriating his FIL, who disowned him. Unable to afford the apartment planned for 2 incomes and unable to return home, Michael moved in with that guy, who lives with his wife and baby. This led to his wife reaching her limit. Despite being treated poorly before, his wife left him after he brought Michael, a jobless stranger, to live in their house without her consent. The situation escalated into a major fight between 2 of them, leading to Michael being kicked out quickly. Alone and desperate, Michael started job hunting, but due to his skewed perceptions, he continued to face rejections. The divorce process was initiated with a lawyer, and the settlement was finalized through mediation. Michael kept insisting he wouldn't divorce, but the evidence of his verbal and physical abuse and his extreme beliefs led to the mediator's conclusion that going to court wouldn't change the outcome. We agreed on a settlement for mental anguish, child support, and division of property, with everything legally documented. Michael's parents promised to take responsibility for him despite disowning him, ensuring he would pay the agreed amounts once he found an employment. Since it's been made clear that his wages would be garnished if necessary, he'd likely want to avoid the dishonor of that happening at his workplace, so he should make the payments as agreed. After the divorce, Michael once showed up at my new apartment. He might have learned my address from the mediation documents and ambushed me at the entrance. However, a friend of Jennifer's husband, a large man, happened to live in the same building and accompanied me home from shopping, encountering Michael. Frightened, Michael hurried away and never approached me again. Probably, a friend of Jennifer's husband was also a large man, which I believe intimidated Michael. Michael remained pitiful until the end. Later, I gave birth to a daughter and returned to work after maternity leave. Working in a cosmetics company with many female and single employees. I found a supportive environment for balancing work and motherhood. About 5 years after my daughter's birth, my product line received high praise, becoming a hit and leading to my promotion. Considering my daughter's future, the pay raise was welcome, and I was determined to work harder when Michael suddenly called. I received a call on my smartphone from an unknown number, thinking it might be work-related, but it was Michael. "I heard you got promoted. Let's meet up, I'll consider remarrying you," he said as soon as I answered. His attitude was as unreasonable and condescending as ever. "Excuse me? So, return the alimony and child support. You should be grateful I'm offering to remarry you." Disappointed that he hadn't changed at all. Even if he had shown remorse, there would be no chance of remarrying, but it's astonishing how little he has changed. I switched the call to video. And I handed the phone to my current husband. "What? What do you want with Emily?" "What? Hey, Emily! Who are you? What the? Don't mess with me!" Michael stammered in a trembling voice before the call abruptly ended. I quickly set my smartphone to block the number that had just called. "Thank you." He seemed really scared, didn't he? "Is he okay?" My current husband, the person who lived in the same apartment complex as me when I got divorced, was the friend of Jennifer's husband I met back then. He's even bigger and more intimidating in appearance than Jennifer's husband. But he's also incredibly kind and always prioritizes me and our daughter. "Emily, you have a prenatal checkup tomorrow, right? I'll come too." "Really? Then it's a family outing." "Yeah." Our daughter, busy drawing at the dining table, cheered. We both headed into the kitchen to hurry with dinner preparations. "Time to clean up for dinner, please." "Can you do it yourself?" "I can. I'm going to be a big sister." Our daughter enthusiastically started tidying up. Indeed, there's a new life growing inside me. This time, the morning sickness was mild and vanished as I entered the stable phase of pregnancy, making me wonder if the severe sickness last time was partly due to stress. "Mommy, will we see the baby tomorrow?" "Yes, we will. Let's ask to see the baby on the tummy camera again." "Daddy's coming too?" "Yes, he is." "Haha." Our daughter giggled happily. Her smile always fills me with joy. She is undoubtedly the treasure of our family. and were eagerly awaiting the arrival of another precious addition. I'm Lynn Manson, 49 years old. I've been married for 25 years and live with my husband, who hasn't held a steady job, and our son, who's a med school student. But since my husband was laid off 20 years ago, he's been unemployed and aimless. I work as a night shift nurse, handling shifts 5 nights a week. Our son Harry, after graduating from a boarding school, is now attending medical school about 2 hours away from our home and living in a dorm. Our family of 3 lives separate lives, barely seeing each other. Harry's living away is one thing, but the disconnect between my aimless husband and me is profound. I work night shifts 5 days a week to cover living expenses and Harry's tuition and living costs. Even on my days off, when I try to talk, my husband avoids the conversation and leaves the house. I end up alone, doing household chores and occasionally visiting Harry at his dorm. Often, my husband doesn't come home. Is he working or just out having fun? He never gives a straight answer. He's always untraceable, and when I text him, I mostly get ignored. Still, I keep sending messages and small talks, fearing we'll lose all connection otherwise. Then, one day, after years of this, I came home early from a night shift, planning to relax a bit since I had the next day off. Thinking that, I opened our house's door. It was 9:30 on a Saturday morning. As usual, my husband wasn't home. While preparing the bath, I texted him to let him know I was home and to ask if he wanted lunch. Surprisingly, he called back immediately. Despite the unbelievable turn of events, I hesitated for a moment, but my fingers reacted unconsciously. Hello? I couldn't help but be cautious when my husband contacted me so suddenly. His response was shocking. I'm moving in with my lover. You can keep working for the rest of your life. Out of the blue, indeed. I was stunned and couldn't comprehend what he was saying. He kept repeating it over the phone. What do you mean? Just what I said. So, you're saying you'll live with another woman in this house? What about? That's exactly what you said. I'm going to live in that house with my mistress, and you're going to go out of that house and work at midnight for the rest of your life. What? Are you saying you're going to live in this house with a woman I don't know? Well, she's only a stranger to you. I know her very well, he said with a smug tone. The face on the other end of the phone was undoubtedly wearing a smug grin that's almost embarrassing. I could hear faint laughter in the background. My husband had assumed a sure victory and contacted me accordingly. What am I supposed to do then? Just move out? What? I don't understand. It's exactly as I said. I'm moving in with my lover, and having you around would just be a nuisance. Get it? So, please, just move out now. I always knew he was a hopeless case, but I didn't realize his thinking had decayed this much. He's been avoiding conversations with his wife, me, neglecting family matters, and just following his own desires. So, you've been playing around with girls instead of working? Can't help it, right? I've always been popular with the ladies. Really? Don't play dumb. You fell for me too, remember? Well, I got tired of an old lady like you a long time ago. You should be thankful I stayed with you until now. Thankful for what, exactly? What? I, a popular guy, showed you pity by staying married. It'd have been embarrassing to talk about divorce at work before Harry became independent. I was considerate of you by not divorcing. Thanks for that. Harry's in his 6th year of med school, passed his final exams, right? He'll definitely pass the national exam and soon be a fully fledged doctor. I've been waiting all this time for you and Harry's sake. He always uses us as an excuse for his convenient explanations. I replied quietly, and he sighed dismissively on the other end. When I responded in a small voice, there was a sigh of exasperation from the other end of the line. Man, you're so gloomy. That's why you're no good. Can't you, as a woman, smile more? Seriously, your lack of affection is a turn-off. Sorry about that. Seriously. You're pretty, you know. If you smiled more, maybe I would have reconsidered. Too bad. His voice, combined with my sleep deprivation from the night shift, made me feel dizzy. Have you always thought about this? Huh? About divorcing. Yeah. His indifferent response resonated with me. You knew, right? I tried to be away from home as much as possible. Well, yes. Harry left for the dorm early on, and it was just you and me at home. But you were all about work. And me, laid off, had nothing but free time. You could have worked full-time. Huh? After being laid off so easily during the recession, despite working hard? No way I'm doing that again. But before I could say more about his job, he hurried the conversation along. You're working hard, so there's no problem financially for the house. So, I became a free man. Naturally, I wanted to have fun with girls. And don't worry, I didn't use your money for that. I used the money I earned to meet girls, and, well, I got close to a few of them. Naturally, I wanted to get closer. I'm a man, after all. Does this man know who he's talking to? I imagined his pathetic face, drooling as he spoke. His shameless babbling disgusted me. So, you want to live with one of these girls you got close to? You got it. Exactly. So, move out, will you? Are you saying we should divorce? That's one way to put it. And what about our assets and everything? Huh? It's all in your name, right? I don't have any savings. So, no need to do anything about that. I just want to split up. Understood. So, can you move out quickly? I want to start living with this girl as soon as possible. Look, I just got back from a night shift. I can't just pack up and leave that quickly. I get it. Sure, you need time to prepare to move out. Well, now that we've talked, I don't need to see you anymore. I'll give you 5 days, then you gotta leave. You're saying I have to move out in that time? What else would I mean? Oh, and I left the divorce papers on my desk. Fill out your part and send them in. All right. I'll make sure he regrets this. My anger was at its peak after his selfish demands. I tossed my phone on the sofa and headed to the bathroom. I needed to calm my boiling mind in the bath and plan my next move for the 5-day deadline. That day I finished my shift at midnight. It was too late for dinner, so I stopped by a convenience store on my way home. I bought my favorite snacks and some drinks, and while looking up at the twinkling stars in the clear night sky, I leisurely walked home. Once home, I started preparing the bath to warm up my body chilled by the cold outside, despite it being almost March. Then, my phone rang at this very moment. Hello? Hey! What the hell is going on? It was my excited ex-husband on the line. What do you mean? Why can't I get into the room? You did something, didn't you? I remembered that it had been 5 days since that day and listened to his words. Did something? I disappeared from your life as promised and promptly filed the divorce papers as we agreed. What complaint could you possibly have? A big one. Why doesn't the key to the house work? You did something, didn't you? It seemed my ex-husband was calling from outside our former house, making a ruckus in the neighborhood late at night. But it's not surprising that my ex-husband would want to raise his voice. Oh, that? It's because I moved out. That's all. What? I told you I was going to live here with this girl. Oh, you did say something like that. Why are you doing something so spiteful? Spiteful? Why should I have to prepare a house for you to live in with another girl? Huh? Who signed the lease for that house? That house is in my name, right? After you got laid off, you couldn't even rent a house properly, so I rented it in my name. Don't you remember? That house was indeed rented in my name. A slightly large family-type apartment with decent rent. I was also paying a decent rent for the place. There was no way my jobless ex-husband could rent a house, let alone handle any contracts or payments. I was the breadwinner of our home. Ah. Oh. Right. You forgot that while trying to impress another woman? Who was paying the rent again? I was the one paying, right? What, did you tell that woman you were handling everything? My ex-husband fell silent. He couldn't say anything. I bet his phone was on speaker. I made sure to speak loudly and clearly. You didn't pay a dime. Since the house was in my name and I was paying the rent, it's only natural that I cancel the lease if I'm moving out, right? But, so, that house doesn't belong to anyone anymore. Naturally, the keys you have won't work. You're kidding, right? No, it's true. What about my stuff? What did you do with my stuff? Your stuff? I sent all that to your parents' house. What? My parents' house? I could almost see his panicked face. His parents were strict and always nagged him about getting a job. He avoided going to their place as much as possible, but he must have realized I did it on purpose. Complaints and curses came from the other end of the line. Yeah, and I let your parents know we're getting a divorce. I mentioned that you couldn't afford to rent a place, so I sent your stuff there for now. What? You told them all that? Of course. It'd be rude to divorce without a word after 25 years of marriage. Besides, they've been kind to Harry and me. You didn't tell them specifics, did you? Specifics? Exactly that. Well, did you want me to tell them how you've been a freeloading bum, hardly ever home, spending the little money you made on other women? And now, you've got a young mistress and are telling me to leave and get a divorce? Hey! If that's the story, then yes, I told them. What? It was inevitable. I'm not at fault here. Obviously. They asked for a reason. Your parents, unlike you, are very reasonable. They understood as soon as I explained. They even apologized over the phone. Hey, don't go doing unnecessary things. Unnecessary? After all the trouble you've caused, what's unnecessary? The one who's been doing unnecessary things for years is you. My sudden strong tone surprised him, and after a gasp, there was silence on the other end. What? You're not saying anything, does that mean you agree? Agree with what? That you are the one who's been doing unnecessary things. What unnecessary things? Everything you've done, isn't it? What? Let me ask you, did Harry and I have anything to thank you for? You didn't work, weren't home, didn't listen, didn't contribute financially. Yet you had the nerve to complain about Harry's grades and other things, even though you never put in any effort yourself. I'm the father, that's just what I'm supposed to do. What? Did you actually do anything father-like? You never got involved in anything about the house or work. All you did was mock people's looks and character, and complain about the housework. We lived together, so it was normal for me to have requests. Lived together? What is he even talking about? That's not living together. He was more like an animal who whimsically returned to its nest. You relied on me for everything. Weren't all the things you did just for yourself? Even your work was just to earn money for your own fun. You never spent time with the family, only used money and time for your hobbies and desires. You never cared about your parents or mine, not even considering your child. Well, isn't it normal for a person to love themselves the most? What's wrong with that? It's fine if you were alone. But you had a family, a child. Doesn't having a wife and a child mean you have to take responsibility at all times? Look, that's why I stayed as a father and didn't divorce until Harry was grown up. I would have divorced a long time ago. It's not like you weren't raising him alone anyway. You should be grateful that I even stayed in the role of a father. The gap in understanding responsibility made me sigh deeply. The thought of having lived with this man for 25 years nearly brought me to tears. It's fine now. We're already divorced, and I won't be living with you again. Don't worry, I won't ask you to take responsibility for Harry anymore. That's a relief. Good riddance to a gloomy woman like you. Oh, but you will take responsibility for your actions towards me, your wife. What? Responsibility towards you? Alimony for your infidelity. I'll be claiming it from you and your mistress. What? It must have been completely unexpected for him. My ex-husband's voice conveyed utter confusion, as if he genuinely couldn't understand the situation. You're pretending not to understand? What you've been doing is a bona fide act of infidelity, legally wrong. And since the other woman knew you were married and still had an affair, she's also responsible. What? Now? You knew I was playing around outside, so why bring this up now? What do you mean, now? This relationship only lasted because I turned a blind eye to your irresponsible actions. Didn't I send you hints through texts? Like, you need to come home, or don't do anything shameful as a parent. I got those, but... See, you understood the meaning of those words, right? You couldn't stop yourself even though you knew. So you can't say why now to me. Well, that's... He's horrible. I frequently gave him signs that I knew about his betrayals. And he kept betraying me, knowing full well. And yet, you got more and more audacious, even saying you wanted to divorce and live with your mistress. You definitely have to take responsibility. Silence is consent. The woman he's with must have heard everything, and I could hear a faint, high-pitched voice muttering in the background. By the way, I'm aware of the other party involved. Mirabelle, she's there with you, right? I could sense their shock and agitation even through the phone as both of them exclaimed in surprise, "What?" They probably never thought I knew who the other woman was. You can't do wrong and expect to get away with it. I couldn't help but smile at the thought of the two of them, so naively unaware. How do you know her? You're wondering how I know about her. You've never seen her, right? Never met her accidentally, how? But you brought her to our house, right? I saw Mirabelle several times in the intercom camera images. What? You brought her into our house when I was away, right? I occasionally checked the intercom camera images when you had visitors. Wait, so you mean? Yes, I've known for quite a while now. My ex-husband's voice was filled with shock. He probably never knew our intercom had a recording feature. But how? What? How did you know it was her? You mean how I knew her name? Yeah, how? Well, Harry knew about her. He probably never expected Harry's name to come up. I could hear his surprised voice, loud enough that I wanted to cover my ears. Then, the phone was filled with the sounds of them arguing. Were they acquainted with Harry? Who is he? It was like listening to a squabble about infidelity through the phone. Excuse me. I interjected in a loud voice, and they instantly quieted down. Pointless arguments are a waste of time, and I wanted to end this conversation quickly. I took a deep breath before continuing. Once, when Harry came back home, I talked to him about my suspicions regarding you. What? What have you been telling our child? He was 21 then, an adult, so I told him everything. I mentioned that you were bringing women home, and showed him the intercom images. Although the images didn't show anyone Harry knew at that time, about a year ago, when we looked at the images together, Harry recognized her. What? I asked Harry about it, and he said she was his friend's ex-girlfriend. He never met her personally, but had seen her in photos multiple times. Once, when he was out with that friend, they saw her with another guy, which led to their breakup. So, Harry has never met or talked to her but has seen her in real life? Exactly. He's seen her in photos numerous times, and even spotted her with her then-boyfriend. No mistake about it. That's how I know all about Mirabelle, the lounge hostess. I can't believe this. Came a faint voice, but everything was true. My ex-husband was trying to reassure her, but nothing was okay. You think just knowing her identity is enough to hold her responsible? You don't even know her address, how will you claim anything? I anticipated that question. With an answer prepared, I replied. I know her address, even her parents' home address. What? How? It's not hard to find out. She's Harry's friend's ex-girlfriend. Just ask his friend, and you can trace most things. And if not, there are plenty of services you can pay to find out. You have to use money and time effectively, right? I smiled to myself, as if they could see it. On the other end, I heard a small gasp of breath. So, I've already got a lawyer involved. What? It's obvious, right? Why? It's clear that people like you two don't understand the concept of a verbal promise. I'm going to make sure you take responsibility in a legally binding way. My firm tone seemed to unsettle my ex-husband as he stumbled over his words. But, come on! We're already divorced, you can't claim alimony now. That's just nonsense, talk about it in your sleep. Well, honestly, after a night shift, I'd rather be sleeping than dealing with this farce. What? But this isn't a joke or anything. There's no need to sleep on this. What do you mean? You know you can claim alimony for infidelity even after a divorce, right? What? Unbelievable. There were repeated periods of silence from the other side of the phone. I could almost see my ex-husband biting his lip in frustration. With each of his pitiful reactions, my heart felt lighter. You've lost the house, and you'll probably just mooch off her in her apartment, right? What? Typical freeloader lifestyle. I'm sure she knows you don't have any money. Being a lounge hostess, she probably has some. I'll make sure to claim the alimony from her too, and you just live comfortably off her. Shut up. Oh, and don't think about moving or running away. I'm paying good money to keep tabs on her place. What? Like I said earlier, your parents know everything, and I've also found out where her parents live. Any funny business and we act immediately. Wait! No cheap tricks, just take responsibility. Bye. I could hear their voices through the phone. But I didn't need to listen anymore. I ended the call without further concern. And finally headed towards the bath. The plentiful warm water washed away the lingering traces of unease in my heart, clearing them away as it overflowed from the bathtub. In the end, my somewhat threatening approach worked. The two of them didn't flee, and through the lawyer, I managed to claim alimony from my ex-husband and his mistress. Though the amount from my jobless ex wasn't much, it wasn't about the money. I wanted to achieve some result and get closure. Instead, I was able to secure a substantial amount from her. $60,000. I pondered what to do with this unexpected windfall. Why don't you just use it however you want, Mom? It's not the kind of money you save. It's like winning the lottery, just spend it all. Harry's voice came from behind, his back turned to me as he sat on the sofa. After moving out of my place, I'm now living with my son, Harry. Right after that day, I contacted him and told him everything about my husband. Harry, who had just finished his exam and was waiting for graduation with a confirmed job placement, suggested, "Why don't we live together? I'm moving back for work anyway." Now, I'm enjoying living with Harry for the first time since he graduated elementary school. It was a turn of events triggered by that separation. What should I do? I don't really want anything specific. You shouldn't buy something that lasts with that kind of money. Just blow it on something intangible. Oh, how about a trip? Let's go on a trip, just the two of us. A trip? Just us? Yeah. I was always busy with med school and dorm life since high school, and you couldn't take much time off because of your night shifts. I haven't gone on a family trip since I was in elementary school. Ah, you're right. I'm sorry. Your childhood memories. I had thought about it, but hearing it from him made the pain in my heart grow. However, he didn't seem to mind. No. I've always been grateful to you, Mom, for all the hard work you put in every day to take care of the house instead of him. It's all thanks to you that I was able to go to private schools and medical school. But you worked hard too. You studied hard to get into a public med school so I wouldn't have to pay the high fees of a private one. Even then, you still paid a lot for my housing and other expenses. I am who I am today, owe it to you. Thank you. I didn't expect such gratitude from him at this time, and a different kind of happy pain blurred my vision. Hey, smile if you're happy. His voice made my vision blur even more, but I managed a big smile. Thank you. Despite everything in our family, you grew up so well. That's because of you. To show my gratitude, let's blow that money on a trip. Okay, let's go on a trip. My words made Harry grin broadly, excitedly discussing how long we should go, where to relax, and how to enjoy the full $60,000. He still sounded like the little boy he once was. But then he said something I never expected. Oh, and Mom, it's about time you quit your night shift nursing job. What? I'm graduating soon, and there's no need for night shifts anymore. We're living together now, and I want you to start thinking about yourself. His serious and kind words brought back the tears I had just managed to stop. What do you want to do with me, huh? I tried to sound a bit stern to maintain my composure, but I knew he could see right through me. Let's just go all the way out. We can go anywhere abroad, and I'll be your devoted attendant. Really? Shall we go? Yes, let's go. Then let's decide quickly. My spring break is only a month away. Got it. I'm so excited. The unexpected turn of events, the emotional roller coaster, but above all, every word from Harry filled me with joy. Where shall we go? Somewhere fun for just me and Harry? I'll take a spring break, which I've always been told to take. No one will complain now. I'll adjust my work and spend more time with Harry. Losing one relationship strengthened another. Cherishing the newly gained time with family, I thought about soaking leisurely in the bathtub while considering where to travel. Today, I headed to the bathroom to prepare the bath, humming a little tune along the way. You totally fooled me, Mary. I never expected you to be infertile. I don't need a wife who can't have kids. So, I'm gonna remarry a new wife. This is what my husband Sean suddenly blurted out as he took me to his parents' house over the weekend. I thought only my mother-in-law would be there today, but there was a young woman next to Sean. He brought this so-called new wife to his parents' house. As unbelievable as that was, the woman said something even more outrageous. Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Lynn. Actually, I'm pregnant. She didn't seem at all remorseful. And Sean was just grinning. The situation was truly unbelievable. My mother-in-law, who had been watching us, spoke up. So, Mary, would you please get a divorce quickly? Don't make my son suffer any longer. She was on Sean's side. That's when I retorted. Oh? You want a divorce right away? But we're already divorced? What? Already divorced? Are you just being a sore loser? Sean said mockingly. But this wasn't about being a sore loser. I already knew everything. And that Sean had overlooked something critical. I had to make him regret it for the rest of his life. I'll definitely make him pay. Sean, you forgot, didn't you? Every time I showed a hint of defiance, you threatened me with divorce papers, saying if I didn't obey, it's over. I reflected on that. A good wife wouldn't go against her husband's wishes. So, as you wanted, I consulted with a lawyer about the divorce process the other day. Your part was already filled out on the paper, so it's in process. What? When did you do that? You were always indecisive and under my thumb. Sean stammered, biting his nails. That was a habit he had when anxious, dating back to when we were dating. Lynn gently put her hand on his shoulder, turning to him with a smile like a goddess. Suddenly, Sean's face brightened, and he leaned back towards me. Well, you finally did something right. Now I don't have to bother going out to file them. This makes me officially single. I'll remarry Lynn right away. Lynn's eyes welled up, and she blinked excitedly. I almost laughed through my nose at that. Then my mother-in-law stepped forward, arms crossed, and snorted. For someone who can't have kids and is useless, you did something right. So, can you pack your stuff and leave? I always thought you were out of Sean's league. He's an elite worker at a well-known large company. Someone plain and mediocre like you is no match for him, like comparing chalk and cheese. She started bragging about Sean without being asked. How many times have I heard this since we got married? The first time, I had to listen for over an hour. Her nagging was no less than Sean's. I wish this mother and son wouldn't compete in such matters. Just the other day, the CEO personally praised him. He's definitely on the fast track now. That's my Sean. So, don't show your face to us again. It feels refreshing to cut ties with a failure like you. Like mother, like son, huh? As my mother-in-law's chatter finally wound down, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. My mother-in-law, Sean, and Lynn all stared with their mouths agape. Hey, Mary. Has the shock made your brain useless too? Come on, get a grip. It's embarrassing for me if people find out I was married to someone crazy, even for a short while. Relax. The ones with the messed up heads are you guys. Sean and your mom are so good at finding faults in others but totally blind to secrets. Let me enlighten you. Finally, Sean looked puzzled. Good, he should be more interested. This is where it gets interesting. Lynn is already married, you know. Silence enveloped the room. Sean was the first to laugh. What a story. You disappoint me, Mary. I thought you were smarter than this. Yeah, it's foolish to make up such obvious lies when you're desperate and out of options. It's fitting for you, I guess. Lynn, feeling victorious, wrapped her arms around Sean's arm and snuggled up to him. I could see Sean's nostrils flare at the soft touch of her skin. It was utterly revolting. She's just jealous because she's infertile. Don't be too hard on her. It's pitiful, isn't it? She couldn't have kids and was dumped by her beloved. Oh, Lynn. How compassionate you are. Carrying new life in you and still caring for such a spiteful woman. Marrying you is the greatest joy of my life. What a noble love between a man and a woman. This is what an ideal couple looks like. Mary, you should see this love that you'll never have. You should learn from Lynn. Sean dabbed his eyes, and my mother-in-law, who had somehow produced a frilly lace handkerchief, was wiping her tears. Cheap tears, I thought, half closing my eyes as I watched them. I don't know what you're getting emotional about, but I'm not interested in dragging this farce out. Take a look at this. What's this? Interrupting her moment with some piece of paper. What's the big deal about this? What's wrong, Lynn? Why have you frozen up? What does this paper say, male infertility? What? What does that mean? Let me see. Where had the image of the three of them, who until just moments ago were huddled together in harmony, gone? The trio was now fighting over a single sheet of paper. The paper crumpled from their handling now. This paper, as you can see, is an infertility test result. The reason Sean and I couldn't have kids wasn't because of me, but Sean. I had asked my husband to cooperate with me when I started infertility treatments. Such things are meaningful only when done together as a couple. But Sean outright refused to cooperate, blaming me for the infertility. I managed to get a sample from him through various means and submitted it right away. The results are as you see. I waved another piece of paper in my hand as I explained. It was my test result. It read no issues. The three of them turned pale. Why didn't you say anything until now? You should have told me right away when you found out. That's why you're a failure. Don't take it out on me because you're shocked. I never wanted to reveal it in front of others. But you made me. I shook my head in a what-can-you-do manner. Right when the results came, you started working overtime, going out, ignoring my calls and emails. How was I supposed to tell someone who's hardly ever home? Did you know about Lynn from the beginning? My mother-in-law asked, looking terrified, so I smiled kindly. Yes, of course. Even a fool would notice when you suddenly stop coming home. Once I started suspecting, I had to investigate thoroughly. It was interesting, like a drama, uncovering all the hidden facts. My mother-in-law collapsed weakly onto the floor. My husband Sean stood motionless, staring at me like a statue, mouth agape. I kept a smile on my face and clapped my hands together loudly. Well, no one truth has come to light. Let's summarize. First, Sean and your mom thought I was infertile. During this time, Sean's mistress, Lynn, got pregnant. Both of you were overjoyed and pressured me to divorce, welcoming Lynn as the new wife. I walked slowly around the room while talking. Every time my slippers scraped against the floor, I could tell each of them held their breath. However, now it's revealed that Sean is infertile. Here's the question. If Sean is infertile, whose baby is Lynn carrying? Sean and his mother silently turned to look at Lynn. Her eyes, which were bright and gleaming when I first arrived, now lost their luster, looking flat and dull. A bead of sweat trickled down Lynn's forehead. Her lips, tightly pressed, trembled slightly, and her nervously tapping fingers betrayed her composed posture. My mouth curled up slightly, admitting to myself that I felt a small sense of victory. But Lynn, capable of adultery, was different. Her mind must be wired differently from ordinary people. In a not-so-normal way. Lynn forced a smile as wide as possible. Where's the proof that this test result is real? Sean and his mother turned to me, startled. Perhaps still having the energy to fight back. What a waste of energy. Lynn stood up straighter, puffing out her chest, confronting me confidently. The core of your claim is that piece of paper saying Sean is infertile, right? It's not directly from a doctor, so it could be considered fake, couldn't it? If Sean's infertility is denied, then the child in my belly is genuinely mine and Sean's. You'll take responsibility for accusing me of being married. I thought to myself, if witches existed, they would laugh like this. Narrowing their eyes into crescents and smiling unnaturally with their bright white teeth. Lynn must have deceived and trapped people before. No choice then. I shrugged, and Lynn's smile deepened clearly. Sean and his mother's eyes lit up with hope. I bent down. All three leaned forward in anticipation. Then I reached out my hand. There was a small card on the flooring. I picked it up and handed it to Lynn with a smile. It must have fallen out when I walked around the room. Lynn looked puzzled, but her face changed as soon as she turned it over and saw the written side. Lynn, what's wrong? You're as pale as a ghost. Are you feeling unwell? Sean asked with concern. Without a word, Lynn showed him the card. It read John Doe. Sean fell back in shock. His face rapidly turned pale. Hey, what's going on here? My mother-in-law asked, still not grasping the significance of the name on the card, which she almost snatched from Sean's hand. FCU Director John Doe. Isn't FCU where Sean works? What's Lynn's connection with the company's president? You're asking me to spell out something you already know? You really want to escape reality, don't you? Well, I'll make it clear for you. John Doe is Lynn's husband. My mother-in-law fell to her knees with force. Her whole body shook violently. No, this can't be true. Sean having an affair with the president's wife. If this gets out, Sean will. I know, we just won't tell anyone. She jumped up, grabbed me by the collar. I was a bit taken aback by her sudden aggression. Mary, if you want alimony, I'll pay it. Just keep this a secret between us. Oh, I've already reported the affair. What did you say? You failed. No, it can't be true. It has to be a lie. This can't be happening, it just can't. The room erupted into chaos. I looked towards the window. It was slightly open. This must be echoing throughout the neighborhood. I smirked to myself. Wait. Yes, John Doe is my husband, but the baby in my belly. Lynn was still trying to cover her lies, even now. Her face was covered in sweat, her makeup a mess. I cut her off mid-sentence, closing off her last escape route. It's Mr. Doe's child, right? No mistake about it. It's been confirmed with Mr. Doe's cooperation. How did you do it? I don't remember anything. Didn't Mr. Doe ask you to give a blood sample? He did say something about checking my health just to be safe. Lynn looked confused. The radiant impression she had when she first entered was gone, and she seemed to have aged 10 years in just a short time. Nowadays, they can do prenatal paternity tests with the mother's blood and the father's buccal cells. With these, paternity can be confirmed before birth. No way! You prepared all that! Finally, Lynn collapsed to the floor. Her neatly combed hair was now disheveled. The three of them were in a state of shock, finally grasping the situation. I stood with my hands on my hips, breathing out in satisfaction. Then Sean started mumbling something. I couldn't make out the words, but his expression wasn't good. I braced myself, ready for battle, as Sean suddenly looked up and yelled. Are you kidding me? After whispering sweet nothings, it was all lies? What were you thinking, having an affair with someone from your spouse's company? You're so outrageous. My husband Sean wasn't berating me, but Lynn instead. Lynn, who had been sitting powerlessly, suddenly regained her vigor. Ever heard the saying, no rose without a thorn? You got a taste of something sweet and took it seriously, silly you. Lynn retorted with a dismissive tone. Sean's frown deepened. Oh, are you angry? You've got such high pride for nothing. That's why you're so easy to handle. You never thought you were just being played with, obediently doing as told, just like a pet. What did you say? Who do you think you're talking to? Lynn finally stood up, advancing to within inches of Sean's face. His slight retreat betrayed the intensity of her gaze. Listen, it's because of your failure that our affair was exposed. Who are you glaring at? I'm the wife of the president, you know? My sublime pleasure was ruined by a foolish employee like you, and I'm very angry. Sean took a few steps back and forced a dry smile. So, that's your true nature. I see it now. He walked past Lynn and stood in front of me, then suddenly grabbed my hand. Mary, I've finally seen the light. It was a detour, but I've found true love. You're the only one for me. Suddenly, his lips were hurtling towards mine at an alarming speed. Instinctively feeling terror, I narrowly dodged. Without hesitation, I kicked him in the groin and backed away to the corner of the room. My back was instantly soaked with sweat. Sean groaned in pain but kept calling my name. My mother-in-law, hearing the words true love, sparkled with excitement, fervently defending Sean's plea for reconciliation. Sean, realizing your true feelings is admirable. Just one more push, Mary. There's no man more elite and wonderful than Sean. I reached my limit. I turned to my mother-in-law, who was sending an adoring gaze at her son. You both said it earlier. A person who can't have children is useless, right? I don't think that way, but by that definition, Sean is useless, isn't he? Her sparkling eyes dimmed instantly. She awkwardly lowered her gaze and shrunk in on herself. That should stop her fanciful talk. As for Sean, he was frozen solid. Probably the first time anyone's ever called him useless. He must have always been praised by everyone, especially adults, for being capable. But that's not enough. It's about how and where you apply those skills. It depends on one's morals. It seems Sean lacked those from the start. I looked at him one last time, making sure to keep a safe distance. You were scolding Lynn for deceiving you, but you deceived me too, so you're not in a position to complain. What goes around comes around. My icy gaze brought Sean back to reality. He reached out his hand desperately, still in pain, but I had no intention of taking it. It was too late for everything. Do you understand now how it feels to be called useless? As I gave my husband Sean a full-faced smile, he stumbled but came to me, apologizing. I'm sorry, Mary. It was all my fault. Can you forgive me just this once? I promise to change. They say cheating is a disease, right? It's not that easy to cure. Why would I, now a stranger to you, patiently deal with such an illness? With those words, I finally left my in-laws' house. Without looking back once. Afterward, Sean faced demands for compensation from both me and the company president and was fired from his job for ethical reasons. For a while, he maintained his elite pride and behaved arrogantly at home as if nothing had changed. However, unable to manage household chores and missing my regular, disciplined lifestyle, his life quickly turned into a mess. He was constantly at odds with his once close mother. After the president spread the word about Sean's actions within the industry, his job search went nowhere. His debts kept increasing, and eventually, he came to me for help again. Of course, I flatly refused. Now, he's barely making ends meet by juggling low-paying part-time jobs just to pay off his debts. As for Lynn, the president didn't blame her excessively during her pregnancy, not wanting anything to happen to the baby. So, she deluded herself into thinking she was forgiven. She lived a lavish life as the president's wife, but that only lasted until the baby was born. Soon after the birth, the president took the baby away, leaving Lynn with plans to divorce and evict her as soon as she recovered. At night, hysterical cries could be heard from her house. Meanwhile, I found a job and started a comfortable life living alone. A life without anyone attacking me was utterly stress-free. Eventually, I remarried someone I met through work. The following year, I joyfully embraced my long-awaited child. The tiny life was more adorable than I could have imagined, and I vowed to dedicate everything to make this child happy. Take care of daddy and mommy all by yourself. If you defy me, I'll divorce you and demand alimony. Do you really think such an outrageous demand will fly? I was flabbergasted as I looked at Roy. He stood there boldly, grinning at me. He must think I'll give in to his demands. Indeed, I've been accommodating in the past, thinking it was best for my in-laws. Regardless of Roy, I thought they were good people. But now, after seeing my mother-in-law's true colors, I can't even muster sympathy, let alone concern. I smiled at Roy. All right then, let's get a divorce. Don't say I didn't warn you. Talking back to your husband like that, you're not cut out to be a wife. Good riddance. Choosing your job over my parents, unbelievable. Oh, my apologies. Exactly. Even if I lost my job, I'd put my parents first. I'm not heartless like you. Roy's proud declaration. Then why didn't he take time off now? Instead of pushing it onto me, he should just take a break and help his parents. Blaming me without taking any responsibility himself. Well, don't talk to me at work anymore. I wish I had chosen a different company. Roy said, flaunting his exit, pushing me to my limits. Then you're fired. What? Fired? You're not my boss. Lost your mind from the divorce shock? Laughing, I revealed a truth unknown to Roy. I'm Vanessa, 40 years old. Running an apparel company. I started it at 26. Having lost my parents early, I set goals and focused to motivate myself. Decades later, I've worked relentlessly to stabilize the company. As friends married one by one. I had no time for relationships. Constantly traveling for work, both domestic and international. I can't even remember taking a break. Relatives and others criticized under the guise of concern. You'll be too old to have kids soon. Isn't it lonely, all that work? Arguing was futile, so I just smiled and left. My dedication paid off, with business booming. The effort I poured into most of my life paid off, with the company's performance steadily rising. Finally, I could take regular breaks and enjoy my personal life. At 38. I had no marriage aspirations, but was open to a good partner. That's how I was thinking. Then I met Roy. We connected over watching a soccer game. Encouraged by a subordinate, I went to see a game with a light heart, and there, I met Roy, who was cheering for the same team. We hit it off, and after watching a few games together, we started going out. Eventually, we began dating. He was lively and youthful. He had a wide range of hobbies and took me to various activities, from watching baseball games to playing video games, reading comics, and playing golf. Those moments with Roy were refreshing for someone like me, who had never spared time for fun. At 38, my first boyfriend made me giddy. Then one day, Roy asked, "Will you meet my parents?" "Oh? If I were to get married, it'd be to Vanessa. That's why I really want to introduce her to my folks." It was about 2 months into our relationship when Roy sprung this on me. Though taken aback, I couldn't say no. I always looked forward to our time together. Things moved quickly, and a week later, we visited Roy's family home. "Oh my! To be dating such a lovely lady, my son is one lucky guy." Truly. Such a wonderful woman. And Roy introduced a girlfriend to us, that's a first. He must be really smitten. I was endlessly praised by his kind parents, feeling both happy and embarrassed. Roy, proudly grinning next to me, quipped, "Right? Finding someone like her at 38 is a real catch." It might not sound great, but he meant it as a compliment. I felt confident we'd get along well with such wonderful in-laws. Relieved that the meeting went smoothly. There was just one thing that caught me off guard, Roy referring to his parents as mommy and daddy. It wasn't a common term among adult men in my circles, so it surprised me at first. But I figured it's just a family difference and tried not to mind. Roy obviously had a close relationship with his parents, often praising his mom in our conversations. It was endearing, though sometimes it felt a bit off. Like when the topic of cooking came up. "What's your specialty in cooking, Vanessa?" "I wouldn't say I have a specialty, but I often cook meat dishes." At this, Roy eagerly chimed in. "Yeah. She makes great meatloaf. It's decent, but you know, compared to mommy's. Hey, maybe you could teach her some recipes." I get that a son's fondness for his mom's cooking is natural. But it was a bit disconcerting to hear it put that way. Nonetheless, Roy's mother was delighted. "Oh. Then I better jot down some recipes for Roy's sake." As we were getting ready to leave, a shocking revelation came. "So, when are you two tying the knot?" his parents asked. Roy's casual reply caught me off guard. "I'd do it right now. It'd make life easier. Being a freelancer is tough financially." "Wait, freelancer?" That reminded me, when we first met, Roy was vague about his job, saying something like in sales, sort of. And I only told him I work in apparel, keeping it vague since we were just getting to know each other. Everyone has things they prefer not to discuss. I thought we could talk more about it as we got closer. But a freelancer, I never imagined. Seeing my stunned expression, Roy defensively explained. "What's with that look? Surprised because I'm 38? But there's a good reason for this." Turns out, Roy's mom had always been frail and prone to illness. 2 years ago, his dad became ill and needed care. Roy, then working in sales at a steel company, quit to become a freelancer for the flexibility to care for his dad. "Mommy couldn't handle it alone, right? I wanted to be there for my parents. I thought I'd be okay staying a freelancer for that." Roy glanced at his parents and nodded. "But now that both are doing better, I'm thinking of getting a job again. Gotta step up if I'm gonna marry Vanessa." Roy. I felt ashamed for feeling disappointed that he was a freelancer. He prioritized his parents over his career. What a genuinely warm and caring person he is. On top of that, Roy mentioned he was considering re-employment for my sake. After our conversation, I thought for a bit and then made a suggestion to Roy. "If you're okay with it, why not apply for a job at my company?" "What? Work at the same company as Vanessa?" "Yeah. It's a different field, but you were originally in sales, right? We're actually looking for salespeople right now." I meant well with my suggestion, but Roy made a face that clearly showed his dislike. "I'd rather work somewhere I can make more money." I want to make mommy feel secure. Did he think I wasn't earning much? I went on to explain about my company. Showing him the job site, I mentioned our annual revenue is around $10 billion, and talked about the salary and holidays. I also described other benefits. Roy, looking intently at the site, started to warm up to the idea. This might not be so bad. He ended up applying for a position at my company. Luckily, we were looking to significantly expand our sales team, so Roy got the job. Pressured by his parents, we soon got married. Who would have thought we'd both end up working at the same company? Indeed. By the way, which department are you in, Vanessa? I realized Roy still thought I just worked at the company. Not that I was the owner. I hadn't meant to keep it a secret, but it was somehow hard to bring up. It seemed like a good opportunity to tell him the truth. Well, actually, I was about to reveal it when Roy interrupted with a shocking remark. Whatever. I'll probably quit eventually anyway. What? I didn't understand what he meant. A bad feeling crept over me. Roy glanced at me, smirking in a way I'd never seen before. It made me shudder. What? Got a problem? No, it's not that. What do you mean? I'm not planning to quit my job. Oh, you mean if we have kids? But my company offers maternity and paternity leave. Kids are out of the question. Mommy and Daddy are already a handful. Mommy and Daddy? I tilted my head in confusion, and Roy mimicked my gesture mockingly. My parents. Didn't I tell you? They need care. Your father? But you said he's been doing better lately. That's why you are reemployed, right? Even if he's doing better, they're both elderly. Aren't you worried? Or what? As a wife, are you planning to shirk that duty? I was confused, trying to make sense of Roy's words. He was trying to push the care of his parents onto me. And from his tone, it seemed he expected me to quit my job eventually to prioritize their care. Look, I'm not saying quit right away. It's financially better if we both work. Just start coming with me to my folks' place on your days off. What's that about? I wasn't entirely unprepared for caregiving. I had intended to help and thought I could be of assistance in the future. But I never imagined being forced to regularly visit his parents' home and eventually being pushed into full-time caregiving. What shocked me the most was Roy's attitude. He seemed so positive and reliable before we got married, but after, he changed completely. Was this really the Roy I knew? I didn't want to believe it. I didn't marry this man to end up in such a situation. I wanted to escape reality, but Roy's angry voice relentlessly pulled me back. Listen, you're my wife now. Don't defy me. Understand? I was so stunned by the complete change in Roy that I couldn't bring myself to either agree or disagree. I regretted getting married. If I knew it would come to this, I should have never done it. The thought of divorce immediately came to mind. Society might frown upon a quick divorce. But the idea of spending more time with someone I disliked seemed like a waste of time. I prepared the divorce papers right away. The problem was the reason for the divorce and Roy's parents. The reason for divorce could be worked around. I can involve a lawyer. But Roy's parents were a more significant concern. As Roy demanded, we visited his parents' house every weekend. I didn't look forward to these visits as Roy's treatment of me was rough. But his parents seemed genuinely pleased every time. I'm sorry you have to spend your days off like this. No, it's fine. You're busy with work, Vanessa, and we do feel bad. But Roy is our only son, and having you here feels like our daughter has come to visit. Seeing his mother tearing up with joy, I couldn't possibly dismiss her when she said such things. Every time I visited, his mother would prepare my favorite sweets and her consideration was palpable. Despite not wanting to be controlled by Roy, I couldn't bring myself to mention divorce, seeing how happy it made his mother. 2 months into our marriage, Roy and I started visiting his parents separately. Due to conflicting schedules. Initially, I adjusted my schedule to fit Roy's. And I still hadn't told him about being the CEO of my company. I sensed it would only complicate things with the current state of our relationship. Luckily, Roy seemed oblivious to this fact, which I feared he might easily discover. Roy was not only a problem as a husband but also as an employee, causing several issues at work. I wanted to resolve these problems quickly and get a divorce. But what about his mother? She had been so kind, I didn't want to hurt her. Despite my turmoil, I headed to Roy's parents' house as usual. I had gotten used to entering their house without waiting. Today, as I was about to enter, I heard a familiar voice from inside. It was unmistakably Roy's voice. He was supposed to be at work today, maybe there was a change of plans. As I walked down the hallway, feeling awkward, I stopped dead in my tracks upon hearing the conversation. She's really not sharp, you know. And her housekeeping skills are so. She's serious, but couldn't you find someone better? It was definitely Roy's mother's voice. But it sounded completely different. Mean and spiteful, like a character from a daytime soap opera. Yet, unmistakably, it was her. The same woman who had always praised me. How could such a gentle person say such things? My heart clenched. I didn't want to hear more, yet my feet wouldn't move. Sorry, Mommy. But she's tall, so she can carry you if needed. And if I train her a bit more, she might turn out useful. Well, she's pleasant enough and financially supportive, so maybe it's okay for now. We'll see how it goes. Roy and his mother laughed, speaking freely. As I listened, my heart raced. They were talking about me. Roy's constant complaints were one thing, but hearing his mother's true colors shocked me. Roy's mother always seemed so appreciative, often bowing her head repeatedly in gratitude. We would laugh together while eating sweets or cooking meals. Regardless of Roy's intentions, I thought I had a good relationship with his mother. It was out of concern for her that I hesitated to go through with the divorce. Yet, from their conversation, it was clear that to her, I was just someone to take care of them. Moreover, she said something that felt like the final blow. For now, I just praise and flatter her. It makes her foolishly happy. Roy, you should learn from me. Hearing those words, I left Roy's parents' house as if fleeing. Later, after calming myself down, I contacted Roy's parents and Roy. I'm too busy to meet or talk for a while. I'll contact you again when things settle down. I ignored the multiple calls from both Roy's house and Roy himself. The voicemail recorded Roy's angry voice. Do you think it's okay to inconvenience Mommy like this? Apologize to her directly, right now. You have no right to refuse. As if I would comply with such demands. Of course, I ignored it. At work, I made sure to avoid Roy and stayed at a hotel after work. In the meantime, I steadily prepared for the divorce. Then, one day, Roy found me at work where he had been lying in wait. Hey, Vanessa! Roy looked like he was about to grab me, but seemed to hold back due to the public setting. I decided to talk with Roy in an available conference room. I've been looking for you. I called so many times. Do you have any idea how much I searched? Roy was furious. His breath was rough and his eyes, bloodshot with anger, glared at me menacingly. He stormed into the room and approached me, grabbing my wrist. Let go. Didn't I say that in the phone call? I'll contact you when I'm ready. Is there anything more important than Mommy and Daddy? Do you know how sad they've been without you? Sad? They were bad-mouthing me together, and yet he had the nerve to say that. I was shaking with anger. I wanted to silence him right there. To hurl every insult I could think of. But I was too worked up to speak, so I just glared at him. Roy continued, taking my silence as consent. They're suffering. Right now, they're hungry and have nothing to eat. Forget work today, just go back to them now. How dare he give me orders? We're not children, and it's not like they can't move. They need to stop being so dependent. I pushed his hand away and shouted. I have an important meeting later. I can't just take off for something like that. And if it's so important, why don't you take off work and go see them yourself? I shouldn't have to sacrifice so much for such people. Why should I throw away my significant work for them? Roy probably didn't expect me to fight back. He stumbled backward, surprised. You! Talking back to me? How dare you, as a wife? I've been thinking this for a while, but aren't your values skewed? What do you mean, as a wife? They're your parents. Shouldn't you be the one to take care of them before dumping them on me? Roy's work today was supposed to be just internal paperwork and meetings. Something that could be rescheduled or done another day, and the meetings wouldn't be too much of a hassle to postpone if he asked around. If his mother is so important, he should be the one taking time off. But he doesn't, which shows how much he truly cares. Yet, he tries to command me around. Roy's just a convenient mama's boy. It's so ridiculous it makes me sick. Huh? That's crazy. Why should I, the husband, have to grovel and take time off work to clean up your mess, the wife? Clean up what mess? Let's get this straight. Listen up. As my wife, taking care of my parents is your job. If you can't do that, you have no value as a wife. Roy blurted out his demands, puffing out his chest as if he was intimidating me. He looked like some playground bully. Not scary at all. What even is the value of a wife? Why do I need to be evaluated by him? So, what do you want from me? I asked, sighing. Roy sneered. Taking care of mommy and daddy is your job, wife. If you defy me, I'll divorce you and demand alimony. Does he really think such an absurd demand will work? I was utterly dumbfounded looking at Roy. He stood there boldly, grinning at me. He must think I'll give in to his demands because of my affection for his mother. True, I have been accommodating in the past, thinking it was best for my in-laws. I thought they were good people, apart from Roy. But now, after seeing his mother's true nature, I can't even muster sympathy, let alone concern. I smiled at Roy. All right then, let's get a divorce. Huh? Roy exclaimed in surprise. Do you even understand what you're saying? Yes. I can't be the wife you want, so let's divorce. If you want to claim alimony, go ahead. Whether I'll pay is another matter. I took out the divorce papers from my bag and handed them to Roy. I had been carrying them ever since I considered divorce. Are you serious? Do you realize what you're doing? Yes. Hurry up and sign. Roy was frozen in disbelief for a while. Losing patience, I said, "Oh, not divorcing? Just all talk, huh?" Red-faced, he hastily filled out the divorce papers. Checking the completed papers, everything was in order. I immediately handed them to my secretary to submit. Well, that makes us strangers now. As I said this nonchalantly, Roy spat out. You'll regret this. Arguing with your husband, you're not fit to be a wife. Good riddance. Choosing your job over my parents, unbelievable. Oh, that's too bad. Exactly. Even if I lost my job, I'd prioritize my parents. I'm not heartless like you. Roy proudly declared. Then why didn't he take time off now? Instead of pushing it onto me, he should just take a break and help his parents. Not doing so and just complaining to me is just shifting the blame. Then, don't talk to me at work anymore. I wish I had chosen a different company. Roy said this as he left, and that was the last straw for me. Then you're fired. That must have been the coldest tone I've ever used. Roy stopped in his tracks and turned around. What? Fired? You're not my boss, what are you talking about? Lost your mind from the divorce shock? Roy chuckled, probably thinking it was a joke. I sighed softly and faced him. When our eyes met, Roy flinched, looking anxious. He must be bracing for what I would say next. I took a deep breath and calmly said, It's you who's mistaken. Don't you even know the face of your own company's president? Huh? No, that's not possible. Roy took out his phone and started looking something up. Gradually, the color drained from his face. He finally realized who I am. You're the president of this company? Finally got it, huh? His voice trembled pathetically. No, Vanessa, I didn't know. I didn't know? No, you just didn't bother to find out, right? I never brought it up, but he had plenty of opportunities to know. Even a simple search on his phone would have shown my name, if not my photo. Roy just never cared to look. Roy is just a convenient mama's boy who only cares about income and time off. Not really passionate about his work. That's why his performance at work is mediocre. To you, I was just an insignificant presence. What you and your parents wanted was a serious, hardworking wife who would take care of them. It didn't matter who, as long as she did the caregiving, right? Roy's face turned pale as he opened and closed his mouth, shaking his head. That's not true. If I knew you were the president, I wouldn't have made you do the caregiving. I would have taken care of mom and dad instead, and let you focus on work. So, as long as there's money, you can hire someone. I earn, and the caregiving is left to professionals, while you enjoy your life. Roy muttered a weak denial with a forced smile. Yes, if Roy had been more cunning, that could have been our future. Before I knew the true nature of his parents, if he had proposed like he used to, entertaining me, I would have agreed without question. I'll earn, so you can focus on caregiving, I would have said sincerely. If only Roy and his parents hadn't changed after the marriage, it could have been a viable future. Roy lost that opportunity himself. He looked up at me pleadingly, his eyes seemingly moist. Please, Vanessa. Let's start over. We were good together, weren't we? Let's go out again, okay? Please. True, you always took me to places I didn't know. Everywhere you took me was fun. Roy's face lit up with hope. Right? So, let's. But that was all an act to marry me. Life with you after marriage has been disappointing. I guess the divorce papers might be processed by now. I have a meeting to prepare for. I'll contact you about the termination. You can go home for today. I gathered my things, waved at Roy casually, and reached for the door. But before I could open it, Roy grabbed my left hand. I turned around to see Roy glaring at me. I glared back and asked, "Is there something else?" Something else? No. Our conversation isn't finished. Suddenly deciding on divorce, then telling me you're the president, and now firing me? That's too much. It's all too arbitrary. The divorce was your idea, remember? I never thought you'd agree. And you should have told me you were the president. Roy apparently intended to use the divorce as leverage to control me. The shock of finding out I'm the president must have hit him hard. Such a blame game is not what an adult should play. He never questioned why everything was so easily arranged for him. He's just blamed others all his life. I was so astonished that I was at a loss for words. Roy gritted his teeth in frustration, regretting losing his cash cow, but that's not my concern. That's being too arbitrary yourself. You're just blaming others for your own unplanned and ignorant actions. Roy's face turned red with anger and he yelled, "Coward! How can a big company's president fire an employee for personal gain? That's unacceptable. That's right. This tyranny can't be allowed." Roy stood up, puffing out his chest, convinced he was right. His thinking is too immature. Always believing he's in the right. He's not taking anything I say seriously. I was so exasperated I had to hold my head. Seeing this, Roy smiled, thinking he'd won. See? I hit the mark. Should I take this public? You're the one who'll be in trouble. You're too foolish. If you go public, you're the one who'll suffer. What are you talking about? I cut him off and started listing names. Sarah from HR, Michelle from sales, Susan, and Sophia from accounting. Who else was there? I asked Roy, who began to sweat and look uneasy. What are you talking about? You know very well. These are the female employees you've been persistently inviting out. I've received complaints asking for help. Most of these employees don't know you're my husband. Only my secretary knows. The complaints I've been receiving are about you. Most of the employees don't know that Roy is my husband. Only my secretary is aware. Among all this, I received a concerning report. Michelle from sales has been persistently inviting me out, and it's troubling. At first, I doubted my ears. My own husband was approaching several young female employees. And from what I heard, no matter how many times they rejected him, he kept coming on to them. I was embarrassed and apologetic beyond words. I was just trying to deepen relations as fellow employees. By specifically targeting women over a decade younger than you? And inviting them to hotels? What kind of relations were you planning to deepen? There was evidence in the messaging app of Roy reaching out to these female employees. There was no way for him to talk his way out of this. Your performance isn't great, and you've been a nuisance to other employees. It's a president's job to eliminate anyone causing harm to the company. But, oh, and the accounting department suspects you of embezzling funds. Surely you're not doing something so petty, right? Roy looked away in silence. Unfortunately, this too seems to be true. A mama's boy who loves women and is stingy, and on top of that, causing trouble for others besides me. Disappointing as a husband and as a person. I'm disheartened by my own lack of judgment. I couldn't see him for what he was. All suspicions will be cleared before your termination, so don't worry. Now, I have a meeting to prepare for. You can go home today. Roy collapsed. Slumped over, muttering to himself. He must have realized it was all too late. I left him there and exited the room. Later, investigations confirmed all suspicions about Roy. He apologized to the female employees and then resigned voluntarily. Roy, now unemployed, returned to live with his parents. Later, he tried to start working again as a freelancer, but something unexpected happened. His father needed care, and his mother had been managing. Thanks to that, Roy only had to help out occasionally. However, recently, his mother began showing signs of dementia. Wandering at night. He now had to deal with a father who needed physical care and a mother who was generally fine but occasionally showed symptoms of dementia. I can't get a moment's peace. I'm running out of money. Help me, Roy pleaded. Had the divorce been amicable and had there been no hard feelings with his parents, I might have helped. But they looked down on me as just a caregiver. There's no room for sympathy. I'm sorry, but I can't help. As we're now strangers, please refrain from further contact. Depending on the situation, I may take appropriate actions. After that, Roy stopped contacting me. Post-divorce, I decided to live alone, swearing off marriage. However, just as I made up my mind, someone I've known for years through work confessed to me. Traumatized by Roy, I thought of declining, but having known him for a long time and knowing he's sincere, I accepted his offer to date. Whether it leads to marriage or not, I'm unsure and somewhat skeptical about another change post-marriage, but he's the most peaceful person I've met. Also, as fellow business owners, we have a lot in common. Unlike with Roy, he's truly a partner. If I can spend my future with him, I hope this happiness lasts. With that wish, I continue to work hard today.